Let me ask you something, and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself. Have you ever done everything right? You were kind. You were patient. You were understanding. You gave him space, attention, reassurance, sometimes all at once, and yet, he still didn't step up. If you've ever wondered why a man can feel close to you, but not fully committed to you, tonight, you're about to understand something that changes everything. Because here's the truth: most people won't tell you men don't fall in love because you give more. They fall in love when they feel the risk of losing you. Not through games, not through silence, not through manipulation, but through one powerful boundary that instantly shifts how he sees you. And no, this boundary is not about being cold. It's not about being distant. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about self-respect so clear, so calm, and so unshakable that a man feels it in his chest. When this boundary is in place, something incredible happens. A man stops coasting. He stops taking you for granted, and without you asking, chasing, or explaining, he chooses you. Today, I'm going to show you the exact boundary that triggers real emotional investment in men, and why the moment you set it, everything changes. Stay with me, because once you understand this, you will never tolerate half love again. When most people hear the word boundary, they immediately think of ultimatums, rules, or threats. They imagine crossing their arms and saying, "If you don't do this, I'm gone." But that isn't a boundary. That's a demand wrapped in fear. A real boundary is quieter than that, stronger than that, and far more attractive. A boundary is not something you announce to control another person's behavior. It's something you live by so consistently that other people naturally adjust to it. Here's the shift that changes everything. A boundary is about what you will participate in, not what someone else must do. The moment you try to force a man to change, you're already losing your power. But the moment you calmly decide what kind of relationship you will and won't invest in, something fascinating happens. He feels it. Not because you said the right words, but because your energy changed. Many people believe love is built by proving loyalty, patience, and understanding early on, so they tolerate late replies, they accept half plans, they explain away mixed signals. They stay emotionally available, even when the effort coming back is inconsistent. And they do all of this thinking, if I'm just supportive enough, if I just show him how good I am, he'll eventually realize what he has. But what this actually teaches a man is that he can stay exactly where he is and still keep you. There's no urgency, no consequence, no reason to step up. A real boundary quietly removes that safety net. When you live by a standard instead of announcing a rule, you stop chasing clarity and start responding to behavior. If a man is inconsistent, you don't lecture him about consistency. You simply stop investing at the same emotional level. If he cancels plans repeatedly, you don't scold him or pretend it's fine. You make yourself less available, not as punishment, but as alignment with your own values. Your actions become honest reflections of what you're experiencing, not strategic moves to get a reaction. This is where many people get confused. They think boundaries are about playing hard to get or acting distant. They're not. You're not withdrawing affection to provoke anxiety. You're choosing not to pour energy into something that isn't nourishing you. There's a huge difference. One is manipulation, the other is self-respect. And self-respect is felt instantly. Men are incredibly sensitive to emotional certainty. When they sense that you're choosing them, not needing them, they experience you as valuable. But when they sense that you're afraid to lose them, even if they can't articulate it, the dynamic shifts. Suddenly, they're the prize, and you're negotiating for security. A boundary flips that dynamic back into balance without a single argument. Living by a boundary also means you stop over-explaining yourself. You don't need to convince someone that your needs are reasonable. If you find yourself constantly justifying why you want more effort, more communication, or more commitment, that's a sign you're trying to negotiate desire. And desire doesn't negotiate. It responds to clarity. Clarity looks like this: you know what kind of relationship you want, and you behave as someone who expects it. You don't rush intimacy with someone who hasn't shown consistency. You don't prioritize someone who hasn't prioritized you. And you don't stay emotionally open to someone who keeps you guessing. You don't dramatize these choices. You don't announce them. You simply live them. What's powerful about this approach is that it gives a man a choice. He can rise to meet you, or he can stay where he is. But either way, you don't chase him down to make a decision. That freedom is what creates real investment. When a man steps up because he wants to, not because he's being managed, The bond that forms is deeper and more stable. A demand says, change so I can feel safe. A boundary says, I am safe because I choose myself. That distinction is everything. This is also why boundaries feel uncomfortable at first. If you're used to earning love through effort, setting a boundary can feel like you're doing something wrong. You might worry that you're being too much or too cold. But discomfort doesn't mean danger. It means you're breaking a pattern that kept you stuck. Growth almost always feels unfamiliar before it feels empowering. When you consistently live by your standards, you stop needing reassurance. You don't need a man to promise the future when his present behavior already tells you everything. And paradoxically, that's when men start offering reassurance freely. They lean in, they clarify their intentions. They sense that if they don't, they might lose access to someone who knows her worth. This isn't about threatening to leave. It's about being genuinely okay if something isn't aligned. That inner stability is magnetic. It signals emotional maturity, confidence, and self-trust. And those qualities are far more compelling than any technique or script. The most important thing to remember is that boundaries are always for you, not for him. They are expressions of how you honor your time, your energy, and your heart. When you live by them calmly and consistently, you stop auditioning for love and start selecting it. And when that shift happens, men don't just fall in love, they step into it willingly, because they can feel that being with you is a privilege, not a guarantee. Men invest when they feel emotional consequence, not pressure. That's a concept that is simple in words but profoundly difficult in practice. Too often, people confuse love with effort, attention with commitment, and persistence with attraction. They believe that if they chase someone hard enough, do enough favors, or show enough care, a man will finally step up and fully invest. But here's the hard truth: men don't commit because of pressure. They commit because of consequence, clarity, and respect. The difference is subtle but monumental, and understanding it changes everything about how you experience relationships. Pressure creates resistance. When a woman texts constantly, over-explains, or tries to negotiate commitment with a man, she unintentionally communicates doubt. I am not sure if you care enough, she is saying through her actions. And that doubt, no matter how polite or loving, triggers a natural response in most men to pull back. It's not about manipulation, it's biology and psychology. Men are wired to respond to challenge and emotional consequence, not to anxiety and neediness. When a man senses that his choices don't carry weight, he doesn't feel motivated to change because there is no risk. There is no reason to invest. He can continue half investing and still receive full attention. Emotional consequence is not a game. It's not about ignoring him to make him jealous, or withdrawing love to force a reaction. It's about being authentic with your experience and letting your standards naturally create impact. For example, if a man cancels plans last minute, you respond in a way that honors your time instead of pleading or excusing his behavior. You might say, I'll see you when you're available, and then continue with your life. This response communicates a powerful message without words: your time is valuable, your energy is finite, and inconsistency has natural consequences. You are not punishing him, you are simply living by your reality. And when a man encounters that, he starts to realize that his actions actually matter, because they directly affect whether he gets your time, your attention, and your affection. This is why pressure fails and consequence works. When someone feels pressured, their natural instinct is to resist. Pressure triggers avoidance. Emotional consequence, on the other hand, triggers investment. A man feels the weight of his choices because he sees a reflection of his actions in your responses. If he oversteps, withdraws, or fails to prioritize, he sees that the dynamic changes. Your energy is not endless. Your presence is not guaranteed. And the realization of that scarcity, rooted in authenticity, not manipulation, creates motivation. Another way to look at it is through the lens of respect. Men invest when they feel respected and when they know that respect is contingent on their behavior. This might sound strict, but it's not about harsh judgment. It's about alignment. If a man sees that you value yourself enough to have standards, he begins to see himself as someone who must step up to match that value. If a woman allows inconsistency, he unconsciously interprets that as permission to coast. Emotional consequence is a natural boundary that reinforces respect. When your energy is aligned with your standards, a man recognizes that love is not something he can take for granted, it is something he must actively cultivate. It's important to understand that emotional consequence does not require you to withdraw love or affection entirely. You can be warm, kind, and present, But your presence is meaningful because it is conditional on behavior. For example, if a man cancels plans repeatedly, you don't have to stop caring about him entirely. You simply show that your time, your attention, and your heart are not infinite. You allow him to experience the impact of his choices naturally. And here's the most important part. When a man sees that he risks losing your engagement, interest, or affection, he becomes more invested, not out of fear, but out of desire to align with someone who values herself. Many women struggle with this because they equate consequence with cruelty. They fear that setting emotional boundaries or allowing natural consequences will push the man away. In reality, the opposite is true. When a man feels that there is emotional consequence, he starts to engage more fully. He starts to show up. He starts to prioritize. Why? Because he realizes that love is not automatic, it is earned through consistent, meaningful action. And in that process, he also gains a deeper appreciation for you. Because your affection is not freely given to anyone, it is given to someone who earns it. This approach also fosters clarity. When you apply emotional consequence, you are no longer trying to interpret mixed signals, debate effort, or negotiate commitment. You are simply responding to reality. You are assessing behavior against your standards and adjusting your investment accordingly. This clarity allows a man to see exactly what is expected, without confusion, drama, or emotional negotiation. He knows that if he wants to be part of your life in a meaningful way, he must act in alignment with your energy and your values. This creates an environment where men are naturally motivated to invest because they understand the stakes, and the stakes are real, calm, and respectful. The power of emotional consequence also lies in its consistency. One-off attempts to withdraw, set a boundary, or create impact rarely work. Men notice patterns, not isolated incidents. If you only sometimes honor your standards or only occasionally allow your energy to reflect reality, it sends mixed signals. But when your emotional consequence is consistent, when your behavior aligns with your standards day in and day out, it communicates a deep, unshakable truth: your heart, your time, and your energy are valuable, and they are not negotiable. And once a man sees that consistently, he naturally elevates his investment because he recognizes that he is interacting with someone of genuine self-respect. Finally, emotional consequence is transformative not just for the man, but for you. It removes the anxiety of trying to make someone love you or behave a certain way. It empowers you to live fully aligned with your values, free from the trap of chasing approval or attention. You become the person who sets the tone for the relationship rather than reacting to someone else's choices. And in that alignment, you attract men who are capable of showing up fully because they sense that half effort simply won't work. Men invest when they feel emotional consequence, not pressure. And emotional consequence is not cruelty, manipulation, or withdrawal. It is clarity, alignment, and self-respect in action. When you live by your standards, when your energy reflects your values, and when your presence is meaningful, because it is earned, men naturally step up. They rise to meet you, not because they are forced, but because they recognize that being with you is an opportunity, not a guarantee. And that difference, between being desired and being taken for granted, is the difference between shallow attraction and real, lasting investment. Overgiving teaches a man he doesn't need to step up. This is a truth that many women struggle to accept because it goes against everything we've been told about love. Society tells us that if we love someone, we must constantly give, constantly accommodate, constantly adjust. We're taught that patience, understanding, and emotional labor are proof of care, and if we give enough, he will eventually reciprocate. But here's the hard, inconvenient truth: giving too much too soon, or too much without reciprocity, doesn't create love, it creates complacency. When a man experiences constant overgiving, he doesn't see value, challenge, or emotional consequence. He sees availability that has no boundaries, and when there are no boundaries, there is no reason to fully invest. Think about this. When someone continually goes out of their way, constantly accommodates another person's schedule, repeatedly forgives or overlooks inconsistency, and sacrifices their own priorities for someone else, the other person starts to assume that this behavior will continue indefinitely. This is not malicious. It's simply human nature. People respond to patterns. If a man learns that you will always say yes, that you will always be there, that your time, energy, and attention are endless, he doesn't feel the need to step up. There is no urgency. There is no reflection required. Giving without expectation of reciprocity creates an invisible safety net that allows him to remain passive in the relationship. Overgiving also blurs the lines between attraction and convenience. Men, like everyone, respond to signals. When you overgive, the signal you are sending is one of low emotional consequence. You are showing, often unconsciously, that your presence and your attention can be taken for granted. And when that becomes the norm, he begins to treat it as a baseline. He does not appreciate it the way he would if it were selectively given, because it no longer feels like a choice. It becomes a default expectation. And attraction, real, deep attraction, is always about choice. If he feels that he can have it without effort, he will rarely make the effort. The key problem with over-giving is that it creates imbalance. Relationships are not one-sided, yet over-giving skews the dynamic so heavily that the other person unconsciously learns that the relationship is about what they receive, not what they contribute. When one person is constantly providing, forgiving, or adjusting, the other person's behavior tends to follow a path of least resistance. He may show occasional gestures, but there is rarely sustained, consistent effort. And over time, this imbalance erodes respect, emotional tension, and investment, all of which are necessary for love to deepen. It's important to understand that over-giving is not the same as generosity. Generosity is deliberate, mindful, and selective. It communicates value. Over-giving, on the other hand, is reactive and often motivated by fear. The fear of losing the person, the fear of not being loved, the fear of being alone. When actions come from fear rather than choice, they signal neediness and uncertainty, not care. Men pick up on this subtly, even if they can't articulate it. They sense that the energy you are giving is not grounded in self-respect but in anxiety, and that shifts the power dynamic. Instead of being motivated to rise to your standard, they feel they have already won, simply by being present. Another consequence of over-giving is that it prevents a man from truly showing his best self. When everything is handed to him, he never experiences the challenge of investing, initiating, or proving his value. He is never given the opportunity to step up because the path of least resistance is always open. Real love requires effort, engagement, and reciprocity. Men want to feel needed, not in a manipulative sense, but in a meaningful, healthy sense where their contributions matter and are recognized. Over-giving removes that dynamic entirely. This is why boundaries are so critical. When you stop over-giving, you are not being selfish, you are being honest. You are aligning your actions with your values, your needs, and your emotional well-being. You are creating space for a man to step into his full potential, to show up in ways he might not have had to before. When you give selectively, intentionally, and with awareness, your presence becomes powerful because it is not guaranteed. It becomes something he must earn, and in that earning, he invests not out of fear or obligation, but out of genuine desire to align with someone he respects and values. Many women fear that if they stop over-giving, they will lose the relationship. But in reality, over-giving is often what drives men away. When there is no challenge, no consequence, and no reflection of effort required, a man may take your presence for granted and emotionally disengage. By stepping back, by honoring your own needs and refusing to give endlessly without reciprocity, you create a dynamic where he can either rise to match your energy or step aside. Both outcomes are healthier than staying stuck in a cycle of over-giving and under-receiving. Over-giving also impacts self-esteem. When you are constantly pouring energy into someone who doesn't reciprocate, you start to internalize a story that your worth is measured by what you can provide, rather than by who you are. You begin to confuse love with validation, and this confusion often leads to resentment, frustration, and emotional exhaustion. By ceasing to over-give, you reclaim your sense of value, establish self-respect, and create a relationship dynamic where love is mutual, not transactional. The transformation that occurs when a woman stops over-giving is subtle but profound. Suddenly, interactions carry weight. Attention becomes meaningful because it is given consciously, not automatically. A man begins to experience emotional consequence naturally, without manipulation or drama. He starts to recognize that his behavior impacts the quality of the relationship, and that if he wants love, attention, and connection, he must contribute consistently and intentionally. And in that process, attraction deepens, commitment strengthens, and the relationship shifts from convenience to genuine investment. It is also worth noting that over-giving is often rooted in fear, not love. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of being alone, these feelings drive excessive giving. When a woman learns to separate fear from love, she begins to give from a place of choice rather than compulsion. She begins to understand that real love is not about exhausting herself to make someone care, but about creating a space where care is freely offered and freely received. And when a man encounters this energy, he responds in kind because he senses authenticity, confidence, and self-respect, qualities that are far more attractive than any act of overgiving. Ultimately, overgiving teaches a man to coast, to assume, and to expect without earning. Stopping overgiving shifts the dynamic completely. It creates balance, encourages reciprocity, and fosters genuine investment. Men step up not because they are forced to, but because they recognize that love, attention, and care are meaningful and conditional on effort and alignment. And in that shift, for both partners experience a relationship that is deeper, healthier, and more fulfilling. When a woman stops overgiving, she reclaims her power. She communicates that her time, energy, and heart are precious. She allows a man to see the value of showing up, to feel the weight of his choices, and to invest willingly. She creates a relationship where love is a living, full mutual experience rather than a one-sided effort. Overgiving may feel safe in the short term, but it is a trap. The real path to love, respect, and commitment lies in giving intentionally, expecting reciprocity, and allowing a man to rise to the occasion. This is why overgiving is one of the biggest mistakes women make, and why stopping it is one of the most powerful moves you can make in creating authentic, lasting love. Consistency matters more than chemistry when it comes to love. This is a truth that surprises many people because we've been conditioned to believe that love is about sparks, butterflies, and those heart-racing moments that make us feel alive. Movies, books, and social media romanticize chemistry as the ultimate indicator of connection, but real, lasting love is built on something far less flashy and far more reliable: consistency. Chemistry is exciting, but consistency creates security. Chemistry draws people in. Full consistency keeps them engaged, invested, and committed over the long term. Without consistency, chemistry fades, and relationships often collapse under the weight of unmet expectations, misaligned priorities, and emotional instability. Think about chemistry for a moment. Chemistry is thrilling because it feels effortless. It's the laughter that comes easily, the glances that make your heart race, the intense attraction that makes time disappear. But chemistry is inherently temporary if it isn't supported by steady, predictable, and meaningful behavior. A relationship built solely on chemistry is like a house built on sand, beautiful in the moment, unstable in the long term, and vulnerable to even the smallest disruption. Consistency, on the other hand, is the foundation. It is showing up in ways that matter day after day, demonstrating reliability, accountability, and care in both the big gestures and the small, quiet moments. Full consistency matters because it creates trust. When a man shows up the same way over and over, when his words match his actions, when his presence is dependable, it signals to a woman that she can rely on him. Trust is not built in a single moment of chemistry, it is built in repeated actions, in patterns of reliability. And when trust exists, emotional intimacy deepens. A woman can relax, invest, and be vulnerable without fear because she has experienced consistency over time. Chemistry can make someone want to be close. Consistency makes someone feel safe being close. On the flip side, even the most intense chemistry cannot compensate for inconsistency. A man may say all the right things, create magical moments, and sweep a woman off her feet, but if he is unpredictable, unreliable, or emotionally erratic, the relationship cannot flourish. Inconsistent behavior erodes attraction faster than anything else. Missed promises, unexplained absences, and fluctuating effort create anxiety, doubt, and insecurity. A woman may tell herself that the chemistry is worth it, but deep down, she senses that consistency is missing. Without that steady foundation, passion alone cannot sustain long-term love. Consistency is also a measure of integrity. When someone consistently treats you with respect, kindness, and consideration, it communicates a powerful truth: they are reliable, their intentions are genuine, and they value you as much as they value their own time and energy. In contrast, full inconsistent behavior signals a lack of accountability. A man who is hot and cold, intense one day and distant the next, may be exciting in the short term, but he ultimately creates instability. Attraction is replaced with anxiety, and love becomes a rollercoaster ride rather than a secure, nurturing connection. Many women mistakenly believe that they need to keep the spark alive by chasing chemistry or creating constant excitement. But the reality is that a man who consistently shows up, communicates clearly, and invests in the relationship naturally maintains attraction. You do not need to manufacture drama, emotional highs, or constant novelty to keep someone interested. When consistency is present, the relationship becomes predictable in the best way. It becomes reliable, secure, and emotionally satisfying. That predictability is not boring, it is deeply attractive because it allows both partners to build trust, intimacy, and long-term commitment. Consistency also provides clarity. When a man consistently behaves in alignment with his words, it removes doubt, confusion, and emotional guessing games. You don't have to question his intentions, overanalyze his behavior, or wonder if he truly cares. His actions speak louder than any words or fleeting chemistry. And clarity is one of the most powerful drivers of emotional investment. When a woman knows she can rely on a man, she can fully invest herself in the relationship without reservation. This level of emotional engagement is impossible when behavior is unpredictable, no matter how intense the chemistry may feel. Another important aspect of consistency is emotional availability. A man can be charming, charismatic, and physically attractive, but if he is inconsistent in his emotional presence, the relationship suffers. Emotional consistency means being present, listening, showing empathy, and engaging in the relationship in ways that align with his intentions. It's not about perfection, it's about reliability over time. Women intuitively recognize this, even if they can't put it into words. Emotional consistency builds security, full intimacy, and desire in a way that fleeting chemistry alone cannot achieve. Consistency also teaches boundaries, respect, and accountability. When a man consistently honors your time, your feelings, and your needs, he demonstrates that he takes the relationship seriously. Conversely, when he is inconsistent, he signals that the relationship is secondary to convenience or impulse. Patterns of behavior speak louder than any grand gestures. A man who consistently follows through on his commitments, communicates honestly, and shows care through actions rather than words proves his reliability. That reliability, repeated over time, fosters genuine love, emotional investment, and long-term commitment. It's also worth noting that consistency builds attraction in a way that chemistry cannot. A man who is consistent in his effort, communication, and care becomes more attractive over time because his actions create emotional safety, respect, and admiration. Women are drawn not only to the excitement of chemistry, but to the security of predictability. Consistency signals that he is capable of sustaining love, intimacy, and partnership, not just momentary thrills, and that kind of attraction is enduring, deep, and resilient. One of the most common mistakes in relationships is mistaking occasional bursts of chemistry for true connection. A man may be spontaneous, romantic, and exciting at times, but if he is inconsistent in his attention, care, or effort, the relationship will never reach its full potential. Chemistry may make the highs feel exhilarating, but inconsistency creates a cycle of doubt, insecurity, and frustration. A woman may stay because of the chemistry, but over time, the lack of consistency erodes trust, emotional safety, and long-term desire. Consistency, not chemistry, is what ensures the relationship grows steadily and meaningfully. Consistency also allows for personal growth within a relationship. When behavior is predictable and reliable, both partners can feel safe exploring vulnerability, sharing dreams, and investing in each other's lives. Without consistency, the emotional foundation is unstable, making it difficult to trust, communicate, or plan for the future. Chemistry might bring two people together, but it is consistency that allows them to build a life together. Ultimately, the difference between chemistry and consistency is the difference between fleeting passion and lasting love. Chemistry excites the senses and captures attention, but consistency builds trust, security, and genuine emotional connection. A man who is consistent in his actions, words, and energy demonstrates reliability, accountability, full and emotional maturity, all of which are far more important than any spark or attraction alone. Relationships may begin with chemistry, but they are sustained by consistency. When both partners show up consistently, love deepens, commitment strengthens, and the relationship thrives. Consistency matters more than chemistry because it is measurable, dependable, and transformative. Chemistry may fade, feelings may fluctuate, circumstances may change. But when a man consistently invests in the relationship, shows up emotionally, communicates honestly, and acts in alignment with his intentions, he proves that he is committed not only to the relationship but to you. That is what creates lasting love, full deep emotional investment, and a partnership that grows stronger over time. Chemistry can open the door, but consistency is what builds the home inside it. Self-respect is the strongest attraction trigger there is. This is a principle that many women underestimate because it feels less tangible than physical appearance, charm, or even chemistry. People often think that love is won through attention, effort, or proving oneself to someone else. But the truth is that self-respect communicates a level of value and confidence that cannot be faked or ignored. When a woman demonstrates self-respect, She automatically signals that her time, her energy, and her heart are not commodities to be taken lightly. That energy is magnetic. Men are drawn to it not because it is demanding or manipulative, but because it reflects authenticity, stability, and strength. In short, self-respect is not just attractive, it is irresistible. Many women mistake self-respect for being cold, distant, or too strong. They fear that if they show boundaries, insist on fairness, or refuse to tolerate disrespect, they will push a man away. But the reality is quite the opposite. When a woman maintains her self-respect, she establishes clarity. She demonstrates that she knows her worth and will not settle for less than she deserves. This clarity is profoundly attractive because it removes the emotional guessing games that many relationships are built upon. Men are naturally drawn to certainty, and self-respect provides a calm, unwavering form of certainty that makes them feel secure, challenged, and compelled to rise. Self-respect is more than simply setting rules or boundaries. It is a way of being. It manifests in the way a woman carries herself, the energy she brings to interactions, and the consistency with which she honors her own needs and values. It is the quiet confidence of someone who knows that their presence matters, that their time is precious, and that they deserve mutual care and attention. When a man senses this energy, he instinctively understands that if he wants to be part of her life, he must contribute meaningfully. He cannot take her for granted, because self-respect ensures that complacency is met with natural consequence. Over time, self-respect becomes a powerful filter. It filters out men who are unwilling or unable to meet a woman's standards, while naturally drawing in those who are ready and capable of investment. A woman with self-respect does not chase, she does not manipulate, she does not compromise her values for attention. Instead, she lives in alignment with her worth. Men are attracted to that alignment because it signals strength, stability, and emotional maturity, the traits that are the foundation of lasting love. One of the key elements of self-respect is the ability to enforce boundaries without guilt or apology. Many women struggle with this because they equate love with sacrifice. They feel that if they insist on their standards, they might appear selfish or demanding. But boundaries are not about selfishness, they are about honesty. They communicate that a woman values herself enough to refuse situations, behaviors, or treatment that are not aligned with her worth. And when a man experiences those boundaries, he does not see them as obstacles. He sees them as an invitation to step up, to rise to the standard, and to engage in a relationship that is meaningful and reciprocal. Self-respect also influences the way a woman responds to inconsistency. A woman who lacks self-respect may excuse repeated cancellations, mixed signals, or half-hearted effort, thinking that her love and attention can fix the situation. But a woman with self-respect responds differently, for she recognizes the impact of behavior on her energy and acts accordingly. She does not need to lecture, plead, or manipulate, she simply honors her own standards. That action, calm and deliberate, carries a weight far beyond words. It signals that she is not available to be taken lightly, and that her emotional investment must be earned. Another important aspect of self-respect is the refusal to settle for less than a fulfilling relationship. This does not mean expecting perfection, nor does it mean being inflexible. It means understanding that love is a two-way street, and that mutual respect, effort, and care are non-negotiable for healthy connection. Men respond to this clarity because it removes ambiguity. When a woman demonstrates that she will not tolerate disrespect, indifference, or inconsistency, it challenges a man to rise to the occasion, not through fear or pressure, but through genuine desire to align with someone of high value. Self-respect is also deeply tied to emotional stability. A woman who respects herself is less likely to react impulsively to insecurity, jealousy, or fear. She does not over-text, over-explain, or chase reassurance. Instead, she remains grounded, calm, and aligned with her principles. That stability is magnetic because it contrasts sharply with the chaos and emotional volatility that many men experience in relationships. It signals maturity, confidence, and reliability, the kind of traits that inspire commitment, investment, and deeper emotional attachment. Physical attraction and chemistry can draw a man in, but they are fleeting if not supported by self-respect. A man may be initially captivated by beauty or charm, but long-term desire is maintained through consistency, boundaries, and alignment with personal standards. Self-respect ensures that these qualities are communicated not through words alone, but through actions, energy, and the way a woman navigates her life. Men respond instinctively to this kind of authenticity because it tells them that the woman is grounded, independent, and whole, someone whose love must be earned and appreciated, not assumed. Another subtle but powerful effect of self-respect is the elimination of neediness. When a woman lacks self-respect, she often seeks validation through another person, giving more than she receives, compromising her values, or overextending herself to gain attention. But self-respect changes the energy entirely. It allows a woman to operate from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. She gives because she wants to, not because she needs to. She loves because she chooses to, not because she fears losing someone. That freedom, that lack of desperation, is inherently attractive. Men are drawn to confidence, not dependence, to choice, not obligation, to autonomy, not neediness. Self-respect also impacts the long-term trajectory of a relationship. A man who is attracted to a woman because of her self-respect is more likely to invest, commit, and behave consistently over time. He understands that her love is meaningful, not guaranteed. He knows that her attention is valuable, not disposable. That awareness fosters loyalty, effort, and emotional connection. It creates a dynamic in which both partners are motivated to rise to each other's level, rather than coasting, settling, or taking the relationship for granted. In essence, full self-respect is the ultimate form of self-love, and it is one of the strongest triggers of attraction, because it communicates value without words, standards without demands, and confidence without arrogance. It is felt in the way a woman carries herself, in how she responds to behavior, and in the energy she brings into every interaction. Men are naturally drawn to this energy because it signals that love is not casual, that effort matters, and that commitment is meaningful. Finally, self-respect is not static. It is cultivated through conscious choices, reflection, and practice. It is expressed in the decisions a woman makes daily, honoring her boundaries, prioritizing her well-being, maintaining her standards, and refusing to compromise her worth for convenience or fear. Every act of self-respect strengthens her confidence and reinforces the magnetic energy that attracts men who are capable of investing fully. Over time, it becomes a force so powerful that it reshapes the way men perceive, approach, and engage in relationships. Ultimately, self-respect is the strongest attraction trigger because it communicates a truth that cannot be ignored: that a woman is whole, valuable, and deserving of love that mirrors the energy she brings. When self-respect is present, men are compelled to rise, not through fear, manipulation, or pressure, but through desire, admiration, and recognition of worth. It is the foundation of lasting attraction, deep emotional investment, and genuine, committed love. So, what does all of this really mean? It means that love is not about chasing, overgiving, or trying to fix a man. It's not about being perfect, or bending yourself into someone else's expectations. Real love, the kind that lasts, the kind that makes a man show up fully, is triggered by one simple truth: you honoring yourself. When you set boundaries, live by your standards, create emotional consequence, refuse to overgive, stay consistent, and carry yourself with self-respect, something remarkable happens. A man sees you differently. He feels differently. He invests differently. Because here's the reality: men don't fall in love with uncertainty. They don't fully commit to someone they can take for granted. They don't step up when there's no consequence, no clarity, no standard. But when you hold your energy, when you show that your heart is valuable, when you act in alignment with your worth, without fear, without pleading, without manipulation, he steps into love willingly. He rises. He chooses you. And he does it from a place of genuine desire, not obligation. Tonight, I want you to leave here knowing this: love is not about convincing someone to care. For love is about creating the conditions where someone cannot help but care. It's about showing up as a woman, or a person, who knows her value, honors her boundaries, and refuses to settle for half love. That energy, that clarity, that self-respect, it is magnetic. And it will not only transform the way men see you, it will transform the way you see yourself. So step into it, be consistent, set your boundaries. Let emotional consequence guide the connection. Stop overgiving. Carry yourself with unshakable self-respect. Because when you do, the right man will do what the wrong ones never could. He will see you, appreciate you, and love you fully. And that, my friends, is the kind of love that lasts forever.